Welcome to the Software Design and Development Unit of our Higher Computer Systems course. Our first topic area will be Development Methodologies. As always, we have some learning intentions. I will learn about the stages of the Iterative Development process. I will learn about the stages of the Agile methodologies. I will build an understanding about the characteristics of the methodologies and how they differ from each other. For this topic area, we will have some success criteria, which should be used as a tool to measure your progress. I can name the stages of the iterative development process in order. I can describe the purpose of each stage of the process. I can name the stages of the Agile methodologies. I can describe the main activities of an Agile methodology, and I can describe the main differences between iterative and Agile development. Firstly, let's look at what we mean by a development methodology. A development methodology refers to the approach taken by a software development team to produce and develop a product. It will consist of multiple sequential phases during the project's life cycle, and it can help the developers and development teams plan and produce and test really good software. The methods themselves help to improve collaboration, management of time and resources, and various other aspects of the project. There are two specific development methodologies we will look at. The first one being the iterative development process, which we should be familiar with from National 5. And the second is Agile development. Firstly, let's look at the iterative development process. This is a traditional development process, highly successful in the production of high quality software solutions. It's been used for many years. It has a number of stages, starting with the analysis stage, followed by design, implementation, testing, documentation, evaluation, and maintenance. This graphical representation of the model shows that stages can be completed in parallel and worked on at the same time. For example, analysis can be worked upon, and the findings can then be used by the design team to start to design the piece of software and complete an algorithm. This can be done before the analysis is totally complete. We would say the same for the design. The design team would create an algorithm or a partial algorithm which can then be used to start the implementation phase while the design stage is being complete. This allows each stage of the project to flow. There is documentation produced at each stage of the iterative development process. At the analysis stage, we produce a requirement specification. We then produce an algorithm or design, a printed listing, which is a printout of the completed code. An extensive test plan will also be produced, as well as a user guide and technical guide of how the software actually operates and the technical requirements in order to install the software. Finally, we'll have an evaluation report. There are a number of different people who will be involved throughout the process. We'll have analysts, we'll have staff and management, software engineers, project managers overseeing the project, and we'll also have an independent test group involved to ensure that the iterative development process has done its job and produced a piece of software which is fit for purpose. The iterative development process is regarded as an iterative process. This description comes from the model being designed to revisit previous stages in light of new information. For example, if an error is found in the testing stage and it's identified, then we would revisit the design stage to adjust our algorithm, re-implement and then retest. The iterative development process has certain characteristics associated with it. It's really well planned. A huge amount of time is spent on analysis and design. These are regarded as really important stages of the cycle as they'll determine what the project must achieve. It's a structured process, which means it's really rigid in its approach with very little flexibility. We mentioned earlier it iterates, so we can revisit stages in light of new information. However, this can increase time taken to complete a project. Some of the projects developed using the iterative development process can take a considerable amount of time to complete. So time is a consideration and a characteristic. And the size of a project being developed by the iterative development process is normally a large-scale project due to its rigid, organised and structured approach. However, this is often the benefit of the iterative development process when it comes to large-scale projects and the management of them. We'll now look at Agile methodologies. This is an approach that involves breaking a project down into phases. This emphasises continuous collaboration and improvement between the software house and the client. It's flexible, iterative, and emphasises continuous feedback and adaptation. Agile projects are broken down into phases called sprints. A project sprint is a short period of time within the project where a team works to complete specific tasks or meet certain milestones or deliverables. Sprints break up the project timeline into smaller, more manageable blocks. Each project will have a certain number of sprints in order to complete the project. Prototyping is often used at the start of a sprint, where feedback is gathered from the client. And a sprint cycle is several steps that are repeated during one sprint cycle and then carried out over a series of other sprint cycles. We have the requirements step, the design step, the development step, testing, deployment, and review. This shows a graphical representation of a completed sprint cycle. Agile methodologies also have characteristics by which we can identify them. There is huge emphasis on communication, with face-to-face communication being a key principle. We also use prototyping to get regular feedback from the client. There is strong emphasis on leadership. Project management is key when it comes to Agile methodologies and bringing different teams working in different cycles together. Sprint cycles are used to break down the project into smaller, more manageable phases. And the size of the project also. Projects of small to medium scale are suitable for Agile methodology due to its fluent nature and reliance on continual communication and feedback. We have looked at both iterative and Agile methodologies. Let's now compare and contrast both methodologies to highlight the key differences. We'll compare and contrast the iterative and Agile methodologies using certain areas, the first being client interaction. With the iterative development cycle, Clients are heavily involved at the start and end points of the development. Clients will sign off the requirement specification at the start of the project. That specification is fixed for the remainder of the project. At the end of the project, an evaluation will take place using the specification to ensure that the software is fit for purpose and meets all the requirements. Feedback will be given and used to redesign any aspects not met. Of course, this is very heavy on time. In contrast, Agile methodologies use the client feedback throughout the entire process. That communication takes place considerably throughout the project. Clients will give feedback on each prototype as it's produced to meet the requirements at that stage. Feedback will be acted upon at that stage to improve the software. Goals, however, can be changed throughout the project. This makes Agile methodologies a little more flexible. Teamwork is an important area for any methodology. With the Iterative Development Cycle, we have teams of analysts, programmers, testers and documenters who work independently of each other at each phase. These teams mainly work in isolation with some communication required between each phase. In Agile methodologies, teams of developers communicate and collaborate and work together throughout the entire project and do not work in isolation. During a project, regular, fast, face-to-face communication between individuals and teams is an important factor to allow accurate and quick progression of the project. With each methodology, documentation is produced. However, each methodology is slightly different. The Iterative Development Methodology, a detailed project specification, is created at the beginning of the project, which is signed off by the software house and the client. Documentation is also produced at each stage of the process. There is a significant amount of time spent during the project on documentation, which includes design, program commentary, test plans. In contrast, Agile methodologies, modelling solutions remains important. However, creating large documents that are not regularly updated or not regularly referred to upon completion of the project are not. Agile methodologies focuses on reducing but not removing documentation. It spends time in small cycles of coding, testing and adapting to change. Any documentation produced in the Agile methodology, for example, internal commentary, should focus purely on progressing the project. Well, how do we measure progress using these methodologies? With the iterative development process, we follow a strict plan, with progress measured against the timescale set at the beginning of the project. Project managers are really important because they review progress and agree those timelines. Missed timelines can result in huge financial penalties. Agile methodologies break projects down into short development goals. These are called sprints, as we learned about earlier. This involves cross-functional teams working on planning, analysis, design, coding, testing and acceptance testing. Progress is measured by the time it takes to produce good working prototypes or working components of the software. Agile methodology focuses on delivering software as quickly as possible. The iterative development process uses a predictive methodology, focusing on analysing and planning the future in detail at the start of the project. Predictive methods rely on effective early phase analysis, and if that goes wrong, the project may have difficulty in changing direction. We often have a change control board to ensure they consider only the most valuable changes within this methodology. In contrast, Agile methodologies are adaptive. They focus on adapting quickly to changing realities. When the needs of the project change, the adaptive teams change as well. These teams have difficulty describing exactly what they will do next week, but could report on which features they plan for next month. The further away a date is, the vaguer an adaptive method is about what will happen on that date. And finally, we will look at testing. For the iterative development cycle, testing is carried out when the implementation phase of the project is complete. There may be component, unit or integrated testing to perform, but the main testing will occur after the implementation stage and will usually follow a predefined test plan. In contrast, Agile methodologies, testing will occur throughout the entire project. It will occur as and when necessary during sprint cycles.